unreliable location for reasons of security and therefore insecurity. Cometh the hour, cometh the mothership that is Ark Midnight, streaking out of the dark of the deep range and into the light of the deep strange. I am John B. Wells on the bridge. Welcome aboard, Ark Riders and Caravanners. This is going to be an amazing evening as we make our way to the midnight hour here in the great state of Texas, which is sizzling worse than Oak Lawn ever thought of sizzling. Or even the Castro district. Don't drop your keys. Yes, you can tell the attitude is there, because that's what it's all about, isn't it? Attitude. So how about this stuff? We got an amazing announcement to make. I think the Caravanners and everybody else are going to be really delighted to hear it. We have several offers, good stuff, inexpensive stuff, in some cases comes pretty close to free stuff. As we begin episode 52 of Ark Midnight. Tip of the hat to Miss B for getting this whole thing orchestrated. I can tell you that if it were not orchestrated, this would not be happening. My position was, they're not going to let me on the radio again. Besides, I've got Caravan. No, they will. Watch and see. So I say in advance, like I used to say in the old days, if I suddenly drop off the scope, just come to caravantomidnight.com. You'll find me. Tuesday through Thursday, I am privileged to host this program. 759 programs in archive right now waiting for you. Fantastic guests. Absolutely fantastic. And we broach some subjects that, I'm serious when I say, others do not. Now, there are some activists out there in, for example, YouTube land that are doing some very, very good work. Unfortunately, in YouTube land, you also find a lot of people who are not doing good work. What they are doing is distributing, well, falsehood, disinformatia, all that stuff. It's not good. Это безумие. Sorry, I waxed Russian because, well, the Russians influence everything. So I'll tell you what, let's just run down a couple of little news things for you that you might find of interest. Did you hear about this mysterious ship crashing off Japan? A U.S. naval vessel has crashed into a transport ship, and 7 U.S. sailors are now missing. This is not good. Not good at all. So we're praying that they're floating out there and they're all right and they're going to be recovered. It's absolutely amazing what people in the service are going through now. You talk about politics. I've always said, no business can be free from what? Uh-oh, I've got a message coming from over there. What is it? What do you tell me? Oh, wow. Missed it by 1? Are you kidding me? Oh, I can't believe we made it this far. Chief of the boat has just told me we're at 760 on the programs. But anyway, yeah, fantastic. Okay, 759, 760. Who counts over 7? Oh, you do, right. No, it's all about politics, isn't it? I mean, and inside the services, they deal with politics as much as somebody who's in the, I don't know, any department at the local Walmart or whatever that they're dealing with politics there. It's everywhere. And I say again, I've said it a few times, if you look up the word politics in the Oxford Universal Dictionary, I have the 1979 version of it. You need your readers and your Sherlock Holmes looking glass before you can read anything on it because it's like 0.1 font. But under the definition of politics, it goes on for 3 columns of tiny print. And it's not a very nice word. It really isn't. More on that later. Now, the whole jihadi thing has calmed down just a little bit, but on Caravan to Midnight, we say things like, why isn't anybody looking into that huge line of brand new Toyota Tundra trucks? And it's my understanding these are not for export. This is a product, this is a truck for USA only. Who made those trucks? Well, Toyota did. Well, where did they make them? The answer that I received is San Antonio, Texas. We say things on Caravan to Midnight like ISIS is USUS. And then there's that whole email scandal. Hillary Clinton and her private email account. Well, it wasn't a private email account. It was a private email server. So, deep into the politics we go, but we don't have to go too deep. Let me just ask one question. I'm not going to make a statement. I'm going to make a question. In 2015 and 2016, prior to the election, when all this alleged Russian hacking is going on and all these terrible things are going on that are threatening our national security, who was in charge? Was it Mr. Trump? Don't think so. Who was in charge? Who was the former Secretary of State? Now, who was in charge at that time? What were the affiliations of her Huma? And why was her half a sex case at least husband, Anthony Weiner, why would that person have access to this stuff? So when you hear the left, which is destroying itself, the left is literally eating itself. Ted Nugent has decided he's going to back off on his harsh rhetoric. Ted, you're mellowing with age. Don't do that. Don't mellow. You can be mellow when you check out of here. It's not the vitriol from the right that caused the shooting at the charity baseball game practice session. And by the way, that guy can't shoot worth a damn. I'm sorry he hit anybody, but seriously, fired 50 rounds, fired between 60 and 100 rounds. Really? And hit one person. That's not very good shooting. That's like straight out of the Three Stooges. Really is. So, was it the vitriol from the right that caused all of this? No. I don't think so. What do you think? Because in the end, it doesn't really matter that much what I think. What matters is what you think. What matters is your critical thinking skills, being sharp. What matters is whether your eyes are up, always, as we like to say at Caravan. Our program, Caravan to Midnight, is supported entirely by the members of Caravan to Midnight. Now, we have some subscriptions to offer. For example, the newsletter comes out 4 times a year. Joe Meyer puts it out 4 times a year. Joseph Meyer, straightmoneyanalysis.com. And he charges a little over $250 for this. Well, we have a deal going right now. You join Caravan for a year, and you get the March report, the June report, and the report that'll come out at the end of September for $80. You can't beat it with a stick. I said on the program, you can't beat it with your Ray Donovan edition baseball bat. You can't beat it. So back to the member part. A member is a family member, not a subscriber. The Caravanners are members, not subscribers, and we invite you to join our family. 760 programs in archive right now. There is something in there, literally. There is something. There is much, but I'm going to keep it, I'm going to err on the side of conservatism and say there's something at Caravan to Midnight for everybody. But the fact of the matter is there's a lot for anybody and everybody at Caravan to Midnight. And so, tires are kicked, fires are lit. So in the words of Wayne Grow, as depicted by Kevin Gage in the old 1995 movie Heat, we have to get it on, man. And lady, we just have to get it on. Stand by.
You're listening to Ark Midnight with John B. Wells. Now, here is John B.
All right. It's really good to be with you on Saturday nights. I'm telling you, there is no other place I would rather be than behind this mic at the undisclosable location and talk to you and share with you. I want to give a little shout out here right now. I really do. You know, we have handed our progeny a big job. And I see that these millennials, there's a line between the realists and the ones who are just not gonna go along with the status quo. As Mr. Ghost once remarked, who's in his late 20s, I think your generation got set up big time. He said this to me, and I said, oh, yeah. But I'll tell you who got set up even bigger was my parents' generation. My dear mother could not imagine that the news media would say anything that was the least bit inaccurate or willfully false. Couldn't imagine such a thing. In the 80s, I'm saying, I'm inside the apparatus, and I assure you that they will. I don't know yet who they're taking their orders from, but I suspect it's the people above the owners of these various corporations. And then as the years have gone by, we see that 6 corporations own virtually everything. And so everything, magazines, newspapers, the ones which remain, movies, records, television, radio, 6 corporations. For example, Time Warner owns CNN. Did you know that? And if you did, what do you think about that? It's kind of strange, isn't it? Time Warner. So anyway, we have delivered unto our progeny, those who will follow us, a real mess to clean up, but I think that they are more than up to the task of doing so. And so I want to welcome a new Ark writer, 14-year-old Taylor. Welcome aboard, and thank you very much. I'll try to keep in mind. 14. Unbelievable. I mean, spectacular. And so, Taylor gets it, and is going to get more. And Taylor will be able to tell others in her demographic, in her age group, what's really going on. Just remember, when you try and awaken people to something that is so completely foreign and alien to their otherwise rational thinking, you can't throw the whole deck of cards out there. You just give them a card, let them look at that for a minute, then toss out another card, and another, and another, until the whole deck is laid out in front of them. But don't just toss out the whole deck. They'll flip, and they'll withdraw. So just a word to the wise. By the way, the VIP tickets have sold out at the for the Red Pill Expo. That is going to be a very, very interesting and quite unique experience. G. Edward Griffin put this thing on. He wrote, he's written many books, but the one he's most known for is The Creature from Jekyll Island, about effectively the takeover of the banking system by a few people back in 1913. The Federal Reserve System was put into place, and Woodrow Wilson said, I have inadvertently destroyed my country. But you know, it's interesting. I keep using this little analogy over and over and over again, but I get no further, in getting any answers as to how do you solve, for example, the financial situation. Well, if you go to your Bible and you read the part that says the money is the love of money is the root of all evil. Not money, but the love of it. So now, Jack and Jill get married, and they each have $1, and they have a little baby. And the baby looks up at them and says, well, where's my $1? So Jack and Jill look at each other, and they look at the baby, and they each tear off a little piece of their $1, and they give it to the baby. Then they have another baby, and on and on and on and on. So if in 1913 the population of this country was so much less than it is now, if you have 350 million people approximately, I used that figure a couple of years ago, more than that now, and now you're hearing people say it. Nobody wants to be first, but everybody wants to be next, right? 350 million people using the dollar. Well, how are we going to tear off a little piece of our dollars and give them a little bit of our money? Simple. You print it. Then what? What'll make us the most money the quickest? Production? Well, no, not really. We built too much stuff already. I know. Warfare. And so you see, we get involved in these undeclared conflicts over and over and over again. First it was Vietnam. That went on from 1964, April. Lyndon Johnson comes on television to say, we're going to send our boys over there. And they lit that fuse with the thing called the Gulf of Tonkin incident, which was a false flag. Meaning, they didn't do anything to us, we did something to them and made it look like they did something to us. 6 months, barely 6 months. Barely 6 months after the assassination of John Kennedy. Really more like 5, because he was assassinated at the end of November. And November was almost over. So 5.5 months later, here we go into Vietnam, stay there from 64 to 75. Then in March 2003, we decided to go to the Middle East. And we're still there. It's 2017, still there. And our boys and some women are being lost over there. They're being maimed. They're being murdered. Warfare is nothing but legalized murder. And you send your brightest and your best-looking uniforms, your best-looking gear, your most fancy weapons and all that, and you just slaughter the hell out of each other. If anybody can tell me that that's right, please step up to the mic and tell me that that's absolutely right. Now, I repeat, an undeclared conflict. Warfare is sometimes necessary for one civilization to not be annihilated by another. Which is why I keep up with this thing called Jihad Watch. And when you read things from Jihad Watch, remember the big deal George W. Bush made about we're not at war with Islam? Well, I got some news for you. Islam is at war with us. Islam is at war with us. Here's a few headlines. Ramadan in Israel, Islamic jihadist murder female border police officer. She's a pretty girl. She is a beautiful girl. And she's dead now. And guns weren't enough. They decided they need to use some knives too. Next story. London's Muslim mayor, that would be Sadiq Khan, refuses to cancel pro-jihad terror anti-Israel demonstration. Yep. For many years, this march has been rife with anti-Semitism and the fulsome support of a terrorist organization, Hezbollah. I am sure I do not need to remind anyone that Hezbollah is currently massacring Syrian civilians on behalf of President Assad and is funded by Iran, one of the major supporters of global jihad. President Assad. Now, here's the other part. As common sense is so uncommon, and normal has become abnormal, and abnormal has become normal. And our mainstream media spins things any way they like. MSM, Ministry of Smoke and Mirrors. Do we really believe that Assad is murdering his own citizens? Well, he's a doctor. I know there was a Dr. Mengele. He was a pretty rough cat. But as Hezbollah is a proscribed terrorist organization, it makes no distinction between its armed and political wing, yet its supporters will be allowed to march through London streets unhindered, said Mr. Bloom. This is extremely disappointing and challenges the mayor's commitment to rid the streets of London of extremism. Well, he won't even refer to it as Islamic extremism. He won't. But what about President Assad? Do we really believe he's murdering his own people? Or do we just rely on the Ministry of Smoke and Mirrors to tell us so? What is it that they want? They, with the capital T, H, E, and Y. They. What is it they want? Well, they want the resources. They want the control. And so that's just the way it goes. Now, I'm delighted to report that Mr. Chuck Hoppus is going to pay us a visit because he has a special deal for caravanners to be, and also caravanners themselves, as well as the Ark Midnight Riders. And then, just a little bit past 10 o'clock tonight, local time here in Dallas, Texas, we're going to have an astounding announcement that I think you're going to really, really enjoy hearing. This is going to be massive. So, hold on for that. Don't go anywhere. And if you do, take us with you, okay? And we'll take you with us. I'm John B. Wells, and this is Ark Midnight. Stand by for more. That's Chase and Status. And the name of that tune is Blind Faith. And that's how we fly, with blind faith. We're about to be joined by Charles H. Koppas, founder and president of IDP Consulting Group. He's got a special little offer for you. We want to talk to him for a minute. He's an independent precious metals and consulting firm owner that assists clients with pension fund rollovers and commercial storage and physical delivery of precious metals. He's got a business background in sales and marketing for almost 40 years. He's been a licensed security broker and a featured guest on national radio programs and currently host of The Reckoning Hour, a monthly podcast covering current affairs and economics. So enjoy the tunes for a moment. We'll do a little break, and then we'll get on with Chuck Koppas. This is Ark Midnight. Experts agree that America's water infrastructure is deteriorating. Threats include aging infrastructure, ruptured pipes and sinkholes, as well as chemical, pharmaceutical, and sewage-saturated water sources. You need a critical contamination barrier in place for your family. You need the Big Berkey system. It removes viruses, bacteria, pesticides, PFCs, pharmaceuticals, organic chemicals, heavy metals, foul tastes and odors, even radiologicals for just pennies per gallon. Use the portable Big Berkey water purifier at home while traveling, camping, at sporting events, and during an emergency. Because it not only purifies treated water, the powerful Big Berkey system can purify raw, untreated water from sources like lakes, ponds, rivers, and streams. And the Big Berkey system needs no electricity, plumbing, or water pressure, so you can take it anywhere. Get your Big Berkey C2M special by ordering online at berkeywater.com/C2M or call 877-857-PURE.
The question is, do you really want to know? If you do, join the Caravan to Midnight at caravantomidnight.com. Now, more Ark Midnight with John B. Wells.
Thank you very much, my invisible friend. Talking about Charles H. Chuck Koppas. You know, here's the thing. There are a lot of people out there looking at what's going on with the looming financial crisis. It's been the proverbial can has been kicked down the proverbial road, and it's a proverbial spin is what it is. But I have to tell you, as author of America's Financial Reckoning Day, he provides an intriguing background in monetary history and macroeconomics and geopolitics that is prophetically shaping our world today. He provides helpful advice for contrarian investors and for the baby boomers. There's a few of them out there. I'm one of them. This is by way of a pretty serious wake-up call that domestic and foreign issues are converging to script the perfect financial storm. And that would include unsustainable sovereign debt, unfunded liabilities, derivatives exposure on a spectacular level that can lead to an eventual currency collapse, certainly bond defaults, certainly hyperinflation, and with all of that come what? Threats to our civil liberties. So without further ado, here he is, Charles, I call him Chuck, Koppas. Welcome, Chuck. Good to have you with us.
Hey, JB. Good to be with you. Great to be on your weekend show, and always glad to be a regular over there on Caravan to Midnight. So,
well, you are a regular, and I'll tell you, you bring a lot to the party. You put on a spectacular presentation just this past week, and it was amazing. It was so well organized, a slide after slide after slide, which is why, you know, Chuck, it would have been a lot easier to just done audio only. You know, people still call Caravan to Midnight a radio show, and that's fine. I get it. Right. But because a lot of them are listening on their various devices and all of that. But when you can see the material that, for example, you provided, it's a really enriching experience, and a lot of people sent email to us saying, wow, that was really off the charts. That was cool. So anyway.
I enjoy that. That's a unique venue that you have, commercial free, and I kind of exploit the medium, because if you can present things, and I said you remember 80% of what you see and only 20% of what you hear. So I like to make a little impact by doing that, and it takes me about 5 weeks to put it together, seriously. So really enjoy sharing that with your folks, and wish we could do it here. But that's episode 757, by the way, if they want to check that out over there.
757, yeah, that's exactly right, yeah. Well, you know, you're keeping up with the numbers better than I did. I had to be reminded that we took out episode 760 and got that thing posted. So I can't believe we're gonna hit 1,000 shows here before too long. And people say, did you ever think that you would do like 700 and some odd programs? It's like, I didn't really think about it. I can tell you that I wanted to do 750 programs, but it's really cool. And, you know, with that venue being able to talk with you like that, it's like, Chuck, What is the meaning of life? Hold on a minute, we've got to take a break. Just you're about to give us the answer, so we don't do that on Caravan. So it's kind of helpful.
Okay, well, feel free to interrupt me here tonight. Once I get on a roll, you know how it is.
Yeah, I do. And we just let you roll with it. I just sit back and go, okay, this is going to numb your mind. But the good thing about listening to a presentation by a man like Chuck Coppice is that you can just go, wait a minute, let me hit pause. Wait, let me think about that for a second. Okay, I've got it. Let me proceed and listen to more. And it's so very cool. So anyway.
Hey, you mentioned G. Edward Griffin.
Yeah.
Grand old gentleman, I don't know, 80 years old.
Is he really?
I don't know. He's still going strong. Well, he's so healthy. He knows so much about health, and wonderful man. The Creature from Jekyll Island. I think it's in its 30th reprint or something. It's a classic, and great job. And I used a lot of his material in part one of my book to explain monetary history and establish what is money and everything right from the beginning, and especially the Federal Reserve, which we've had a little over 100 years, and it's done tremendous damage. It's just basically a cartel, like a banana cartel, oil cartel, on behalf of the banksters. And it's something that would never square with the U.S. Constitution. This is what monetary scholar Edwin Vieira called it would never pass the supremacy test before the Supreme Court, because you can't square a central bank like this with the U.S. Constitution. And our founding fathers absolutely hated central banking. They knew all about it from the Bank of England, which basically in 1694, by the time they were taxing the colonies to support the war bonds and to be an empire like the British Empire, that was the prime reason for taxing the colonies, and it was all the invention of central banking. In fact, in Griffin's book, he shows throughout history, as soon as the central bank was created there, others started to copy it, and wars broke out exponentially. War is good business. War is a racket by, what's that guy's name?
Smedley Butler, two-time Medal of Honor winner.
War is a racket, and and you combine that with central banking. I mean, Griffin calls it the Rothschild formula: create something that needs massive expenditures, and then monetize the debt, and do it at interest, and enrich the banksters and all of that and everything. So anyway, he's done terrific work. I cover that in part one of my book and so on. But right now we've had the Fed taking some baby steps with the interest rates. That's the drama we all have to wait for. Hold your breath. What is Grandma Yellen going to say? And so they raise this tiny little rate, and they want to take the training wheels off the economy, and they're raising into weakness. This is the only central bank that's trying to do this. No other central bank's doing this. They're going to be forced to go the other way. In fact, they're even talking negative rates and so on. And it was William White. He was a former BIS economist at Bank of International Settlements, and he said that all the major central banks are stoking asset bubbles deliberately to put off the day of reckoning. We're in a world that is dangerously unhitched, unanchored. He said later, we are out of bullets, or as Stockman says, we have no dry powder left. The Keynesians, this is their only answer, is just to print money. And like you said, it's the love of money is the root of all evil, but money is the answer to everything. That's what the Bible says, Ecclesiastes 10:19. I think they need to put that verse over the Eccles building in the Federal Reserve.
There's a problem. Quick, throw money at it.
That's their answer.
Well, it's true, isn't it?
Every time, and we want it. We want it that way. We look increasingly to the central planners, the genius. 12 people meeting in secret 8 times a year to set interest rates. Free markets should set interest rates, not a private meeting front-running this thing, especially not 100 months of zero. But, this is a train wreck coming, and that's why I titled my book America's Reckoning Day. And the term reckoning, it means to settle, if you look it up. It's a settling between assets and liabilities. And, John, as you know, we're on an unsustainable path to the fiscal cliff, the debt ceilings, monetary collapse, everything. Our fiscal monetary problems are more structural than a normal business cycle. We're 10 years long into this. We haven't had a recession in 10 years. Normally they're like 5 years, boom, bust, and so on. So we really, really postponed this thing, and now 85, 90% of our annual budget is mandatory spending. I'm talking, Medicare, Social Security, defense, interest. In fact, this year's, I believe, deficit will be $400 billion, and that is about the size of the defense budget or by itself the Medicare budget. So we're almost saying, well, we got to take care of all the other, people here in America, or we got to be the world's policeman, and we got to go into debt to do it. And on top of that, we should have more health care, right?
Yeah.
It's a great idea.
Sure. Absolutely.
Do more. And that's why I say we have an institutionalized welfare and a warfare state, and now we're stuck with structural unemployment. I think it's really cruel that we talk about a robust economy when you have 100 million people out of the labor force. I don't even know how they get away with that. Well, I'm going to cover that in my next newsletter about the new normal, financial bubbles, and so on. But we've outsourced our jobs. You and I are baby boomers, and we are not very well prepared for this. People are feeling that anxiety, and that's why I believe people really showed up for Donald Trump. That's always how people tend to vote, their wallet and so on. But he was addressing things we really wanted to hear. Unfortunately, I think he's about 20 years and $20 trillion too late. And $20 trillion is not just our national debt. It would be like having a mortgage. It's $20 trillion. That's the principal. We owe the interest. We owe, in fact, $6 trillion to foreigners at coupon rate plus interest. We don't owe this debt to ourselves.
There's only one way to do it, Chuck. But I got to. Boy, you got me wanting to have about, 5 thoughts come out at once, so I'll try and control myself here.
All right.
But it's like this. I think Donald Trump, he's an alpha male. He's successful. He has everything that non-hackers would be jealous of. He really does. These other ones on the left, they try and grovel and make it, I'm messed up just like you are. And, I know you're not. I know you're a little sleazy, but that's okay. We're sleazy, too. We can understand each other. We can get along. I don't think Mr. Trump is not the kind of person who is going to recognize failure as an option, merely a nagging possibility that keeps him on point. And if it comes right down to it, they'll be so upset. But I'm going to make a prediction. Somebody, and I got a feeling it's going to be Mr. Trump, because so far all these attacks on him, he's just played these idiots beautifully and just let them self-destruct. And it's over with. There's nothing there. There's nothing there to see. I mean, I could go on and on about even getting Robert Mueller to do he's got all these Democrat affiliations. He's got lawyers with him that have Democrat affiliations. And so when finally there's nothing there, it's like, okay, just like Ferguson, Missouri, you had Holder down there with the entire Justice Department trying to make a big deal out of it, and they couldn't even convene a grand jury to come up with an indictment. That's exactly what's going to happen here. Somebody is going to say, we're going to have to just forget about the interest. We'll deal with the principle, but the interest, you're just going to have to eat it. And it may hurt, but you know what? Everything that you do is a little bit messy. Everything. Cooking, extrapolated from there. Everything that your life revolves around, you're going to get a little bit messy. And so, if some people have to taste a little pain in furtherance of salvaging the global financial system, I'm thinking maybe we ought to take a little pain and just get it over with. Now, let me ask you this. You referenced G. Edgar Griffin's book, but I want to talk about your book for a minute. Now, you have offered, and it's on the Caravan to Midnight page. You got to scroll down a little bit, folks, because it's you go to caravantomidnight.com. Do not use any numbers. Do not leave any letters out of the word midnight, just the words, caravantomidnight.com. Scroll down on the right. You're going to see that Chuck has a deal for you. You get his book, America's Financial Reckoning Day. You get a 2-hour DVD, and you get a special report. Can you give them a hint as to what is in the, because everybody likes a surprise, but what are they going to see in the DVD, just in the broad strokes, not too much detail?
Well, it's pretty easy. It was a presentation I did, a PowerPoint presentation at Calvary Baptist Church down in Tempe, Arizona, and it's 2 hours long. We did have a break in between. It's 180 slides, you know me, and I put a lot of animation in it and stuff, so it's kind of fun. Tells the story again, from beginning to end, and in that setting. So that's what that is. And then the report is a 20-page report on the petrodollar warfare and collapse of U.S. dollar imperialism. Those are actually downloadable on my site, but I send that out for people as well, and it kind of highlights the petrodollar, the Saudi Arabia, the whole Nixon era, the military-industrial complex. It's pretty complex. Remember Eisenhower's warning about be on guard with the military-industrial complex.
Oh, yeah.
He said that in 1961. And that's what Smedley Butler was warning about, what later he said, I guess. And so we have this, America wants to be the global policeman. We cannot continue this. You know, the Roman Empire collapsed because it had too many garrisons. It had too many, in fact, it was just because of that, trying to be maintaining empire. And remember, I mentioned Joseph Tainer's study on the collapse of complex society. There's less and less marginal return for the investment you're making in your country. We have spent $10 trillion since 2008.
Oh, is that all?
The marginal return.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I think we've reached. I think we long ago reached the point of diminishing returns, which is exactly why we have the staggering debt that we have now.
We do, and it's Ludwig von Mises said this. He said, "There's no means of avoiding the final collapse of a boom brought on by a credit expansion. The alternative is only whether the crisis should come sooner or later, and a total catastrophe of the currency system involved." And I do develop this theme in my book, The Challenge to the Reserve Currency Status of the U.S. Dollar, which was established in 1944, and of course Nixon in 1971 later closed the gold window, defaulted on the Bretton Woods Agreement, and so now the world is floundering towards a very disorderly, reckless monetary reset and a reckoning date. It's going to, because America has the most debt and the most to lose as the 60% of currency reserves in the world and a huge bond market. What if that goes no bid? What if people don't want the dollars so much anymore? What if that exorbitant privilege is taken away quickly? That's what the French called it in 1971. So under pressure, that's what happened, and we've been floating ever since. 46 years on a total fiat currency, total faith and confidence in the genius of central planners. Like Japan, 25-year deflation, buying 80% of their bonds, half their equities. I mean, what else are they going to monetize? The Fed has taken in school loans, car loans, and less than AA bonds and everything else, mortgage-backed securities. And now they think they can unwind that and everything. Again, this is just so much experimentation. We have never in the history of the world seen anything like this. And there's complacency right now. The VIX index is at a 20-year low or something. People, there's not daily volatility. There's nothing shakes them. It could be nuclear bombs coming out of North Korea. It could be, existential risk, counterparty risk anywhere. And everybody they're complacent. And this always precedes a major collapse, crash in the marketplace.
Chuck, that's interesting that you say that, because people, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I have to. It's like people who are listening to this broadcast right now are going, I'm not interested in any of this stuff. I don't care about derivatives. I don't care. Tell them why they should care. What could happen to the guy on the street as a result of not knowing more than he does now, he or she, he and she?
Well, in the capital markets, look at all of 401k. Look at all the pension funds leveraged out, state pension funds going broke. Illinois in a couple of weeks. They're all fully exposed to these capital markets. The bond market is the end of a 40-year super cycle. So these can have broadside effects on people's investments, pensions, confidence, of course, and everything else. What happens when the dollar collapses? This is kind of what Rickards' latest book, The Road to Ruin. There's going to be a tremendous credit freezing up. The world runs on credit. And there's going to be bank bail-ins. There's going to be currency exchange controls. You can expect to see that. And probably exchange rates to a new dollar of some kind. They're going to have to force a Bretton II emergency kind of meeting and put something together. And I think that's precisely where things are moving, especially as they adopted the special drawing right, which we've talked about before, through the IMF, the special drawing rights. I think that's going to be pushed into place, moved into place for a reserve settlement currency. They'll take there's 5 currencies in the basket, and they'll just calibrate the dollar down and, in my opinion, raise the euro up. I think the euro is in better shape than the U.S. structurally, fiscally. They have no trade deficits. They have half the debt, half the unemployment. Things we hear more about that, and it's dysfunctional because one size won't fit all. And from an intriguing perspective, and probably what makes my book rather unique, is that I develop a prophetic matrix where I think how this is going to unfold, based on prophecies in the book of Daniel, chapter 2, and so on, about the rise of Europe. eventually coming out of the old Roman Empire, as Daniel depicted in that prophecy. And I mean, that's just intriguing, and it's precisely pretty much what we see underway over there. And of course, America's decline, we're going to have to take a much lesser role. The new normal is the middle class is almost being wiped out.
Mm-hmm. I've been hearing this for a while. So your book, you actually offer some solutions, but I must ask you, for the benefit of our listeners, is this pretty easy to understand? I mean, once they get into it, it's not like sitting through like a 5-hour lecture that you really are not interested in this subject. I mean, these are solutions that you are going to suggest to them by way of making the inevitable a little easier on them. That's what I take from what you're saying.
Yeah,
yes?
Yeah. They can go to my website, chuckhoppus.com, COPPES, and look at some of the book reviews, and I have sample chapters, things like that. I've talked about reform that's been proposed for Social Security, for monetary reform, like G. Edward Griffin has done in his book, using more of a silver standard, getting rid of the Federal Reserve notes and creating U.S. notes through the Treasury, and get the cartel out of this whole thing. Panama doesn't even have a central bank. Nations don't need central banks. I mean, this is the conspiracy. This is not conspiracy theory. It's history.
It's just so that you can move money around with anybody knowing what you're doing, really, isn't it?
What do you mean, the banks?
These central banks that work with each other. Isn't this just a way of orchestrating things behind the scenes? It's almost like those gangsters that went out to Vegas in the 70s. It was great because all their bosses were in New York and nobody knew what they were doing out there. Isn't this sort of the reverse thing? Nobody knows what the bosses are doing now. The soldiers don't know what the bosses are doing.
They're front-running every market. They're intervening in every LIBOR, everything, whether it's aluminum, gold, silver. They've been suppressing gold and silver since the London gold pool, and now the futures exchanges at Crimex and everything else. I mean, that's the nature of my business, is helping people get into real money. There's your, chapter 8 in my book is 40 pages. It's probably worth the price of the book, just on many contrarian strategies and so on, contingency plan that people could do. But they can see that as well at my business website, IDP Consulting Group. There's several links there on that related to that, as well as precious metals and things. And I can assist people doing that. I can assist them with precious metals IRA. I'd get the heck out of there. If they can move their qualified plans, 401, especially IRAs, consider transferring that into pure gold and silver. It's easy to do, low penalties, fees. I've been doing it for 25 years, so be glad to assist people. Also, they should get my free monthly newsletter, because time goes fast here on radio.
It does.
And if they want to see more, or if they send me an email, or if they sign up, they can sign up name and email there on either of my website. The next newsletter is going to be out the next week, 24th, and I'll send them the latest one if they respond that way. So
that's fantastic. Now look, your book, the 2-hour DVD, and the special report are available, Ark Riders and Caravanners, for $19.95. And there's no shipping, postage, or handling on that. It's $19.95, and you get Chuck's book, you get the 2-hour DVD, and you get a special report. It's a good deal. You should take it. Yeah?
Yes, indeed. And it supports Caravan to Midnight. I turn that over to you guys mostly. So anyway, it's always great to be on your program, and we'll have to do this again sometime.
Well, we will, Chuck. God bless you, and thank you for what you're doing.
You bet. Take care, my friend.
You too. Listen, everybody, go to caravantomidnight.com. CARAVANTOMIDNIGHT.com. No numbers, no missing letters, no NITE. And order Chuck's book, a 2-hour DVD, and a special report for $19.95, and it'll be right out to you. An astounding announcement is coming up right after the top of the hour news and a few spots and, a choice piece of music, and you're going to like it a lot. I'm John Wells, and I'll be back. This is Ark Midnight. Oh, yeah. Where else are you going to hear the chains blasting out over the public airwaves? I mean, who does that? We do. This is Ark Midnight, and we got the electromagnetines and the supplemental electromagnetrons rocking and rolling. I am absolutely delighted to titillate you with an announcement that is coming up. Here's the thing. Caravanners know this, and I'm not like just. What was it that the bartender said in Cosner's Wyatt Earp about the sheriff, the county marshal there, Bean? He said, oh, he's so happy when he was waiting for Josephine Marks to show up. He goes, he'd just lick himself all over if he could. Well, I'm not doing that, but I'm telling you, I'm delighted to tell you this. We get email all the time, and we get snail mail all the time, to the effect that joining Caravan to Midnight is the best thing that people ever did. They tell us that all the time. People have come to faith. People have come to the awakening of what's really happening to them out there, and has been happening for a long time. And I like to say it's a cutesy thing, I suppose, but when I say the Caravan is getting longer and stronger, it is. This program, caravantomidnight.com, is expanding to a spectacular level. It really is. And on the other side of this break, I'm going to give you a perfect example of what I'm talking about. And a while ago, I said, this is John Wells. It's like, that just rolls off better. If you say, I'm John B. Wells, well, who's George Scott without the C, right? We got a John Wells out in L.A. that's a big-time producer. He did The West Wing, Lord only knows what else. And we got another John Wells that does radio work in Dallas. So I got to be John B., or it's just not me, man. As Bob Dylan said, I'm just me. Okay, so that's why I do it. All right, so let's take that break right now, and then we're going to come back, and I'm going to hit you with an announcement that I'm absolutely delighted to issue. Stand by for that. Magnificent music in the background. A sense of majesty, excellence, things to come, good things, wonderful things to savor and enjoy, to be entertained by, to be held within. Yeah, it's a beautiful thing. Trust me.
An arc of rational thought traveling through the void of vacuous content and opinion. Ark Midnight with John B. Wells. Once again, here is John B.
Yes, that's exactly as my invisible friend just stated. Well, you know what? Here's the thing. On Monday, I'm going to go in and do this thing. And when it's over with, if things go the way they normally do when you do these things, somebody's going to look at me and say, what happened to you? And I'm going to say the same thing that Mickey Donovan said after he ran into Sully. And Sully, like, bludgeoned him senseless practically. Mickey said, I ran into an old friend. And that's exactly what I'm probably going to look like. So somebody's going to have to cover me. But the thing is, can't just be covered just because of some medical thing that you got to go do. No, this seems to be inadequate in some way. And so, are you ready? Are you set? Dr. David Janda is going to join the lineup of hosts on Caravan to Midnight, and will be not only doing his 2 programs during the course of the Monday through Friday week, but he is also going to cover me. And after tonight, the next time you'll be hearing me is on Ark Midnight next Saturday night, because I'm going to go into the Red Pill Expo, and Dr. Janda is going to control the mothership while I am away. Dr. David Janda, welcome to Caravan to Midnight. I'm so excited. Zach, there's no chart. The little scribble ink thing has gone off of the chart. I'm so excited to have you as part of the lineup to Caravan. It's just fantastic. Welcome to Ark Midnight. Let me let you say something.
Well, thank you very much, John, and I am honored and humbled and blessed that I've had another opportunity to be on Ark Midnight with you and with your audience, and also to become a part of the Caravan to Midnight wonderful family and platform. I am beyond words, and very honored, and my pledge to the listeners of Ark Midnight tonight, and also of Caravan to Midnight, that my goal is to provide, just as you have done for years, guests and information the bought-off, lamestream, fake media will never touch or provide.
That's just about as good as it's going to get ever on this planet. I'm telling you, this is just. I'm just so happy that you agreed to do it. I really am. It's fabulous.
Well, and that's mutual, John. You know, you are, I'm pretty stingy with my compliments. You are truly an icon in the world of communication, and you've helped hundreds of millions of individuals, awaken them, provided them information that will make them safer and healthier and protect them from a globalist syndicate that is intent on stripping everyone worldwide, other than the few elites, of of their freedom and their liberty and what little finances people have been able to accumulate because of the same globalists.
Yeah, we could add to that list their individuality, their status as an actual individual, and they'll rob them of their faith, even if they can, which is why it was so controversial, and it just annoyed the left so much when Mr. Trump said, in America, we worship God. We don't worship government. And I just thought, wow, did he really say that? That's amazing, And,
well, and John, I know some people think this is an overstatement, but, as we've discussed before, I started doing healthcare policy work under the direction of Ronald Reagan back in 1988, and it continued intermittently under Bush 1, Bush 2, Clinton, although they never listened to what I had to say. Of course, nothing under Obama, but my experience, John, is that, and what Ronald Reagan actually taught me very early in my tenure with him was that, the right-left axis is purely theater. It's purely fake. It's meant to put all of us unwashed, if you will, at each other's throats to divide and conquer for the globalists. They work a different axis. They don't work the right-left axis. They work the up and down axis, up being freedom and down being oppression. Their goal is to strip as much freedom and liberty of every citizen worldwide, not just in our country, worldwide. That's their goal. And Trump's statement about we worship God, well, one of the things I came to realize very early on is this entity that now that we're doing more battle with them, more in the open, if you will, people have caught on because of folks, leaders like yourself, that have come forward and had the courage to bring whistleblowers and insiders that were willing to talk and to bring your analysis forward. That look, there is this sinister entity. These folks, John, my experience is they worship a different God. They don't worship the God you and I and our listeners worship. They worship a different God, and they're evil folks. I mean, they are truly evil. And I think people, before we can ever defeat them and truly gain more of our freedoms back, you have to identify your enemy. And unfortunately, the lamestream fake media is part of this sinister octopus that is on a 24/7 basis trying to strip folks of their freedom and liberty. And the fake media's goal is to keep this deception going and to, if you will, hide what the globalists are truly after.
That was wonderfully stated. It really was, and I'm not schmoozing you either. That was really a good shot, right at the waterline. It's absolutely amazing. And how can you expect? I mean, people they just want to live their lives pretty much. They don't want to make a life of activism or anything like that. But the thing is it's just like war, as was written by I want to say it was Sun Tzu. Maybe it was Musashi, but. You may not be interested in war, but war is very, very interested in you. And it's the same thing. It's like you're going to be affected by whoever has the most activism. And if the left overwhelms the right, then those are the rules you're going to live under. If the right, which still stands for individual liberty, individuality, personal assessment, and personal responsibility in acquiring prosperity, making prosperity, doing something for the world, leaving it in a little bit better condition than it was when you got here. Well, you're going to live under those rules too. So the time is now to pick a side. What side of the line are you on? And understand that your vote counts and your activism counts as well. And I'm not talking about necessarily walking around with a sign and yelling through a megaphone. That's not going to do anything. Showing up at the Bilderberg meeting and just prancing around out there in bikini underwear or whatever and yelling through a megaphone. That's not going to change anything those people are doing. What's going to change what they're doing is when you continue to expose who they are and specifically what they do, who they are connected to, and what the effect is on the people about whom they care nothing.
And it's imperative that every one of our listeners network this information. You see, John, you put it all on the line. I try to put it all on the line.
You do.
But our efforts really are minimized if our listeners don't step up and start networking this information. For example, every one of our listeners should try to set a goal every week that they're going to talk to several of their family members, several of their workers, several of their neighbors, several of their church members, friends, to try to get a bit more knowledgeable on what's really going on. And that's the wonderful aspect. There are many wonderful aspects, but that's the wonderful aspect of what you do with Ark Midnight, and it's a wonderful aspect of what you do with Caravan to Midnight. And every listener should be trying to network this information and encourage their friends, families, neighbors, coworkers to open their eyes to what's really going on, and you have made that very easy for people. And that's through the Caravan to Midnight site. I mean, the podcasts are all there, the video casts are all there, the written information is there. John, you and your staff have done a wonderful job of creating this platform of which folks can blast off, if you will, to regain their freedom and liberty. But they have to be active participants, because the way the globalists win and the way our children are cheated from the freedom and liberty that we had growing up is if our listeners remain silent, if they remain dormant, and they don't network the information and all the hard work you and your staff have done. And what I've tried to do through Operation Freedom, my Sunday show, and DaveJanda.com, our website, if they don't utilize those resources, then the chances of us winning this battle are very small. So people, it's not a spectator sport. It maybe in the past it was, but that's some of the reasons why we've gotten in this mess. People have to become active, and you're right, John. This doesn't mean that they're having a blowhorn or outside Bilderberg meeting. It means that they are networking this information to their loved ones, their friends, their families, their coworkers, and they don't have to pontificate. They can just say, "Hey, look, there's these great websites, caravantomidnight.com, DaveJanda.com. Go to YouTube channel for Caravan to Midnight. Go to Operation Freedom's YouTube channel. Listen to what these guys have to say." And John, you've been doing this for a long time. I started my radio show back in October 2010, and I'm sure you and I have had the same response initially when we started this journey. When I bring whistleblowers forward that I've known for 20 years in the government, when I've been doing consulting work, and people say, "Well, Dave, this information you're presenting, I actually believe it, because the sources you bring forward are very truthful and they reputable, but gosh, it just seems like conspiracy theory."
It was so much fun to talk to my cousin who's out in Arizona. And he said, and I called him up out of nowhere and talked. He goes, "You know what? One of the guys that plays in my band said, 'No way, he's your cousin?'" He was talking about me. And he goes, yeah. And my cousin said, he said, "You've been talking about this stuff all the way back to the 80s. And he goes, "I thought you were just crazy as hell." He goes, "But it was all true." And I said, yeah, stick with me, kid. You'll learn something, okay?
Well, and not only learn something, John, but this is the point we're in, because the globalists are getting desperate. Their plan for their new world order is falling apart at the seams, and they're getting desperate. They're panicked, and this is why you're seeing the attacks against Trump that are so vitriolic and so hysterical, is because this is not a sign of them having the upper hand. These are signs of a cornered rat, and a rat that's losing the battle. Mm-hmm. And this is very. I mean, this is the time. This is the time for people to step up, and because the globalists are petrified. They are petrified of what you do and maybe a little bit of what I do because it empowers people. See, what you do and what I try to do is give people back their lives by educating and empowering them and taking on, if you will, the man being the globalist syndicate. And John, I believe they are losing, and I believe that's why we're seeing the reaction we're seeing, if you will, whether it's in Washington or in Wall Street or wherever it might be.
Well, I think you're absolutely right. I've used and it's funny that you should say a cornered rat, because I've used I said they are struggling like a yellow rat that somebody has smacked and stunned with a shoe and tossed into the toilet. And this thing is struggling, it is scratching, it will bite you, it will attack you, but it's the water's swirling and it's going away. And it wasn't interesting, that ridiculous Julius Caesar rendition they did up in they're doing up in New York.
Yeah, Shakespeare in the Park.
Yeah, and Time Warner supports this. We're not going to drop our sponsorship of it. It's like, oh really? Yeah, that's really cute. But somebody stormed the stage. Somebody got themselves arrested by somebody yelled, "Goebbels would be proud." And it's like, you bunch of Nazis and stuff like that, making a simulation of President Trump being assassinated, Julius Caesar style. I mean, seriously, how moronically sub-juvenile is that? And it's right in there with Kathy Griffin and the severed head. I mean, I'll just I will just destroy myself by demonstrating my vitriolic and complete my all-inness in opposing this president. But you know what? They never get around to saying what exactly it is they oppose. Somebody just recently said, well, he thinks all Mexicans are rapists and murderers. He never said any such a thing. He said illegals are coming across the border. Among them are criminals. Some of them are hardcore criminals. Some of them are rapists. Some of them are murderers. He never said all Mexicans are rapists and murderers, but these people get away with saying that stuff over the public airwaves, and nobody does a thing about it.
Except people like you and me.
That's right.
And John, what we do is we hold the globalist scum feet to the fire of truth.
And there's nothing they can do about it. And don't be confused, ladies and gentlemen. Dr. Janda is covering me next week following this little surgery thing coming up on Monday. But he is with us now permanently. He is going to do, you're going to do your program on Monday and also Thursday, as well as your own radio show that you do on Sundays. So no, a couple of people were confused. It's like, no, Dr. Janda is joining the crew. He has joined. He is a member of the crew. You got me now? All right. Dr. David, hold on just a second. Let's do a break and come back and talk some more, shall we?
We shall.
All right. It is written, let it be done. This is Ark Midnight. Thanks for being with us. Stand by.
An arc of rational thought traveling through the void of vacuous content and opinion. Ark Midnight with John B. Wells. Once again, here is John B.
You remember that old Beatles song, 8 Days a Week? Well, listen, let me explain something to you, because there's so much information coming at some people. They're going, what is going on here? Dr. Janda is going to cover me Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. I will be at the Red Pill Expo. Okay? Now, the following week, after he does his program, which he's been doing for years, Operation Freedom, get it? He's a surgeon, Operation Freedom. Yeah. All right, he does that on Sunday. Well, Caravan to Midnight is normally dark on Monday, but it won't be anymore because Dr. Janda is going to do a program on Monday. Then I'll be back doing Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. Oh, and Dr. Janda is going to do a program on Thursday too. And then I'll do the Friday show, and then I'll do Ark Midnight on Saturday. And then Dr. Janda will do Operation Freedom on Sunday over his own channel, comes out of Michigan. So we're talking 8 days a week here. Even though there are only 7, you'll think there are 8 days a week, because there will be 8 programs a week if you include Dr. Janda's radio program that he's been doing since 2010. So, you get me now? Now, Caravan to Midnight is a 7 program per week operation. And that's where we come up on this. Now, are we clear now? Yeah, it's good, don't you think? Absolutely it is. Okay, we're going to take our little thing here, and then we're going to come right back and talk with Dr. Janda some more. So stand by. This is the one and only Ark Midnight, and it is the one and only. We have Wax Taylor, we have Alice in Chains, and we have Dr. David Janda, who has joined the crew, and I think it's fantastic. So please stand by. Did I say that already? Stand by.
It's not a programming glitch, nor some science you don't understand. It's Ark Midnight with John B. Wells.
Yeah. All right. So if you go to caravantomidnight.com, you scroll down on the right, you'll see Dr. Janda's book, The Awakening of a Surgeon, A Life of Prevention, Health, and Hope. Let me ask you something. Dr. Janda, and I like to call you Dr. Janda because, I know I can call you David, and I do when we're just talking, but look, you earned it. I mean, you are, in my opinion, you are a true doctor who follows the Hippocratic Oath. Number one, do no harm. And when you were deep into the apparatus as a doctor and surgeon, you got on this thing about, well, I mean, how hard is this? All of these procedures that people are having to undergo, and their health they're hanging somewhere between health and disease, and there's no focus on prevention. Though all the focus is on cure, or however temporary it might be. What was the? I don't think this can be overstated, and I don't think it hurts to repeat it at all. What was the aha moment when you went, look, I've had it with this. There's something wrong here, and it led you to write this book and to start your program on Sundays. And by the way, be sure and tell everybody where they can hear it. I'm sure they can hear it online.
Yeah, Operation Freedom can be streamed. It's a live show every 2 to 5 Eastern p.m. on Wham Talk 1600. And the easiest way to stream it is if they go to my website, davejanda.com, D-A-V-E, Janda, J-A-N-D-A.com. There's a listen live, and it feeds right into Wham Talk 1600 based in Ann Arbor, Michigan. My show's on live, as I said, every Sunday from 2 to 5 Eastern. And they're welcome. They can call in if they have questions. But we have outstanding guests in the John B. Wells category. We do a lot of analysis of what's really happening behind the curtain. And folks are always, as I said, welcome to call in and become a part of the show, listen to the show, network the show. But my aha moment, actually, John, in medicine, while I was at the University of Michigan in my residency, I was working on developing operations, research that would help people that had sustained an injury. But I actually also started to focus on prevention. And it actually came early in my career. I had been assigned to be in charge of all trauma that came into the University of Michigan in the month of August, my first year there. And you were taking care of a lot of folks with falls and with motorcycle injuries and injuries from motor vehicle crashes and the like. But the preponderance of folks coming in were coming in with sports-related injuries. And the fallacy was that these little sports injuries were all little events and they didn't have long-term ramifications. Well, some of them were very severe and actually gave folks lifelong impairment. And I asked the simple question at the time. I went to my superiors and I said, okay, well, we're going to take really good care of these people and get them turned around, but why don't we try to prevent these injuries from occurring? Because many of them appear to be preventable. And John, these are some of the best folks in the world at treating folks that are injured. They kind of looked at me like I was from Mars. Like, you want a what?
Right.
I said, why? And really that background in prevention of thinking things through on a prevention standpoint, I actually attribute back to my mom and dad, who actually taught me to think more analytically and to look at the causes of why things were happening. My mom was a history teacher. My dad was a civil engineer. And they almost taught me at an early age how to reverse engineer situations, to look back and to see how they could be modified so that maybe the ramifications weren't so negative. And I just asked some very simple questions. And luckily there were a couple professors at the University of Michigan that said, well, Dave, why kind of well, why don't you go look at that? Why don't you go look at that prevention side? And I started looking at the prevention side of the equation, in addition to working on operations that would help people, so more of the reactive, waiting for the injury to occur for an individual and then taking care of them. And we're very good in the medical profession of taking care of folks after they've been injured, but we're really lousy at prevention. And I could give, John, I could give you and your listener, our listeners, a lot of diplomatic answers of why we're not good at prevention. But the bottom line is, there's no money in it. There's no money in prevention, which is why prevention is not emphasized in medical schools or internships or residencies or fellowship programs. It's because the money is not there to support prevention. So it's all on the treatment side. So I was at a crossroads. Was I going to focus all my research activities on developing other operations to help people, or was I going to focus on prevention? And then something actually very terrible happened in our family. My wife and I at the time had one child and a baby daughter, red hair. She was, at the time, 11 months old. She got very, very ill. Her bone marrow stopped functioning. The concern was that she either had cancer of her bone marrow or she had a very bad viral situation that had destroyed her bone marrow, both being bad, but the worst obviously being cancer. And she got worse and worse to the point where she lost consciousness at the Children's Hospital at the University of Michigan. All my friends were doing everything they could to take care of her, reactive, trying to institute cures. Nothing was working, and she was getting worse and could no longer communicate with us. And my friends came to my wife and I at that point and said, we don't know and we don't believe Allison will make it. And at that point, I did what thousands of parents do every day in children's hospitals around our country and around the world. And I picked her up out of her crib. I held her in my arms. The only person in the room was my dad. And I said a prayer. And as I said this prayer, something happened that had never occurred in my life before. I heard a voice. And the voice said, establish an institute, focus on prevention. And I opened my eyes, I looked at my dad, and I said, it wasn't my dad's voice that I had heard. I said, did you say something? And he looked at me and he said, no, but whatever you heard, follow it.
Really? That's amazing.
And I closed my eyes and I finished the prayer and I asked God to take my life and not my daughter's. And I opened my and I finished the prayer, and within a couple minutes of that, she opened her eyes and started to speak again. And
that's just the way Father works. When you show him, you show him something. You show him your color, and you show him your sincerity. And you don't have to pray for the same thing every night. He hears you the first time. He's got it. He's God, okay? Right. And when you say what you did, I don't have to tell you this, David, Dr. Janda, I mean, but you told him right there. You expressed your sincerity and your belief in him when you offered your own life for the life of your daughter. And he heard you and he goes, "That's my boy right there. Let me just show you something." And he did. And you know, may I just say, praise God.
Yeah, praise God. Absolutely, John. And, you know, it's interesting. My same friends that were trying to treat her and get her better that wasn't working, that same day came back and go, what happened? Right? Now, hey, here, look at something else. Now, this is, and I said, I prayed that God would take my life and not hers. And they looked at me and they go, and you heard a voice? I go, yeah, and it's never happened before, but yeah. And John, they looked at me and they said, you know, Dave, we lock people up who hear voices. And I looked at them and I said, not this voice. And it's very interesting, John. Many people in the field of medicine believe they're all-knowing, all-powerful, that when a life is saved, it's all their doing.
Oh, sure.
And I found, being involved in taking care of folks for 32 years, that we really, as physicians, are pawns. And yes, we can lend help and support to people, but you really have to be oblivious to the fact, and when you take care of people that are critically ill, that there is a much higher power in charge. And some people will come into the emergency room that have little injuries or small situations that don't seem to be life-threatening and will pass. There are other folks that come in with catastrophic injuries where you think, oh, there's no way this person can make it. And they do. And it's very interesting because the folks that continue to take care of folks in medicine, I believe the vast majority of folks realize this, but there's still this contingent that they believe that they're the one calling the shot. You know, one of my operating room nurses used to love to tell this joke when we were in the operating room. And she'd say, you know, what's the difference between God and doctors? And her answer was, you know, God never pretends he's a doctor. Right? And that's also true. You know, physicians put it all on the line. I mean, in many respects, when you're taking care of folks that have communicable diseases, one of which, let's say, is AIDS, you know, you're operating on a patient with AIDS, you're putting your life on the line by taking care of those folks. And I think a lot of times folks don't really realize that docs and nurses and therapists are on a daily basis putting their lives on the line to take care of people. But we also have to realize as providers that we truly are pawns in the situation and that there is a much higher power at work and making a difference in people's lives. So that's why I entitled my book The Awakening of a Surgeon. It was an awakening on many fronts, the power of prevention, an awakening. And I have to say, John, prior to this, I would consider myself a religious individual, but not someone who, if you will, carried my religion on my sleeve.
Yeah, I can relate to that one.
That's right. And it's very interesting because when folks, and it's the first chapter of my book when I talk about what happened to Allison and what happened in that room at Mott Children's Hospital when she was 11 months of age. There are some folks that thank me for relating my awakening. There are some folks, John, though, that say to me, you don't really believe that happened. I go, I was there. It happened. You might not believe it, but it happened. And so many people over the years have said, so right after that event happened, and I was told, establish an institute focused on preventive. John, I had no idea how to set up an institute. But I just started doing it, and it was truly divine intervention because when I started this endeavor of prevention and starting the Institute for Preventative Sports Medicine, people said, "Oh, Dave, you're not gonna publish any studies. You're not gonna make a difference. You're not gonna get an advisory board. You're not gonna get a board of directors." Well, we developed a great board of directors. We had former professional Olympic athletes that willingly, for free, came on as our advisors on the advisory board. Over time, John, we've published over 40 peer-reviewed published articles in prevention that have had enormous ramifications at preventing pain and suffering and disability. And there were all these naysayers that said, you can't do this, you can't do this. And that's the big message my book tries to deliver to people, in that don't buy into the negativity in life. Don't buy into the people that say, no, you can't do that. There's a much higher power involved in our lives that allow us to succeed, to do the right thing to help people. And over time, John, I got a lot of grief and we've discussed this, but of people and entities and industries like the insurance industry and some folks in the sports industry that tried to block our information from coming out and helping people.
And why would they do a thing like that?
Well, their common denominator to the people who opposed us and entities that opposed us and corporations that opposed us was one and only one thing: money. Mm-hmm. That they saw our efforts in prevention costing them a portion of their bottom line, and that's why they opposed us. John, the Institute has been around since, I formed it July 28th, 1989, the day this event occurred at Mott Children's Hospital in Ann Arbor, Michigan, at the University of Michigan Hospitals. So the Institute's been around since 1989. So now we're talking 28 years. And I donate all my time to the Institute, roughly about 20 hours a week. I've done that over 28 years. Every year, every week for 28 years, I just do that to follow through on the mission that I was placed on July 28, 1989. And I thought and I was very naive at the beginning. I thought, okay, well, you have this track record. Just one of our studies, according to the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, according to them, based on their analysis of our work and our published studies, would prevent 1.7 million people from being injured every year just in the United States and save $2 billion in health care costs. Every year, we spend $1,000 on that series of study once, and it's led to 1.7 million people every year from being injured and $2 billion being spent in health care. And I actually thought, corporations are just going to step up and support the Institute. It's a nonprofit entity, and one of the big supporters is probably be the insurance industry. I mean, this is how I thought in 1989. And to this date, John, we've never gotten one penny from the insurance industry. But I did get a visit from a very high-level insurance agency or corporation executive who, a number of years ago, called and said, I want to talk to you. And I'm thinking, oh, good. Finally, the insurance industry got it. They realized the power of what we do in helping people. And I was sitting at a table, and he walked in the room, and a guy was from New York, and he looks at me, and he goes, Janda, let me tell you why we despise you and why we'll do everything in our power to undermine you. I kind of look at the guy like, what? He goes, you cost us money in the insurance industry, and that's why we're going to try to undermine everything you do. I looked at him, I go, whoa, look at what the feds have said. We spent $1,000 once, and it saves 1.7 million people from going to the doctor in the hospital, or it saves $2 billion in healthcare costs. We should be your poster boys for this stuff, for helping. He looked at me and he goes, "You are a poster boy. You're Jesse James. You're wanted dead or alive." He said, "Let me tell you, son, how the insurance industry works." And he goes, doctors are financial morons, but let me make this easy for you. He goes, let's say the cost of insuring you is $1,000. He goes, you've put out all these 10-point prevention checklists of what every community can do to become safer and healthier. And he goes, our actuaries looked at that, and they ran it through, and they actually found that if every community did that, the cost of insuring folks wouldn't be $1,000, but $100. I go, well, okay, so what we're saying adds up. Yeah, he goes, well, let me tell you something how we get paid. He goes, the feds make it so that roughly we can make 7% profit. He goes, if 7% of 1,000 is what? I go, 70. He goes, 7% of 100 is what? I go, 7. He goes, you see, son, you cost us money. The higher costs go, the bigger cut of the pie we get. And that's why we'll never support you. And I looked at him and I said, that business model doesn't hold up over time because the system can't afford prices and costs continuing to go up. And he looked at me and he goes, "You and I will be dead and buried before people realize that." Walked out of the room.
Mm-hmm. So there's no money in prevention of disease.
Right.
No money in a law-abiding public. And no money in peace. So, ladies and gentlemen, ask yourself a question one more time. Who is it that runs this planet? I got a good one for you here. The long and the short of it is simply this. This comes from Time magazine, a bastion of accuracy and truth, but yoga and meditation can change your genes. Inflammation can temporarily boost the immune system and be protective against infection and injury, the authors write in a paper. But in today's society in which stress is primarily psychological, the body's inflammatory response can become chronic and impair both physical and mental health. So meditation, according to the study, can actually change your DNA. What do you reckon prayer could do? Ask Dr. Janda. He'll tell you. This is Ark Midnight. We shall return. Stand by. It is with a heavy heart that I must report to you now, Westwood One has confirmed that the Arleigh Burke-class destroyer USS Fitzgerald has lost 7 sailors in a freak collision between that destroyer and a cargo container ship. My dad, I've got Navy in my blood, didn't serve in the Navy, but my father served on the USS Maryland and in submarines. He was at Pearl Harbor. And the man we call Chief here at Caravan to Midnight and Ark Midnight is over 2 decades as a Chief Petty Officer in the United States Navy. So I'd just like to give him a minute on the air, if you don't mind. Come on, Chief.
Thank you very much, John. You know, it takes a lot to suffer and to sacrifice what those 7 men went through. If you think about what was going on, they got hit by a Filipino merchant vessel that was probably shouldn't have happened, but it did. So with that being said, those guys gave their life for their ship.
Yes.
That's the reason why they're in port right now. And the crew of probably 400, maybe just a little under 400, are able to walk away from that accident because they sealed those valves and everything that had to be done to keep that ship afloat.
Well, there are people crying somewhere. Hearts are breaking somewhere. But that's why we should always remember, we are all brothers and sisters, ladies and gentlemen. We are all brothers and sisters. That's why we shed tears for people we don't know.
And with that, these 7 guys, or gals, we don't know just yet, paid the ultimate sacrifice. And if you don't mind, John, I've got to go ahead and play something for him.
Wish you would. Thank you. May God rest and keep the souls of those departed sailors. Thank you more than we can ever express, but those are the words. Thank you for your service.
You're listening to Ark Midnight with John B. Wells. Now, here is John B.
Well, it's a somber evening now. Didn't see that one coming at all. And apparently the sailors who were lost were all on board the ship. As Chief said, this should not have happened. I'm pretty sure the destroyer didn't run into the container ship. I'm pretty sure the container ship ran into the destroyer. The Navy knows what they're doing. You know, he wants to say something else. Go ahead, Chief.
You know, last night when I was driving home from here, and I was with my wife, and I was telling her, hey, you know, there's 7 people missing. And she goes, well, where are they? And I was like, they're probably stuck in that ship. They're probably trying to shore up something. They probably drowned or something like that, or were crushed.
Yeah, they were trying to save the ship, that's for sure.
It's just unfortunate that something like that happened, and I hate to see some shipmates go down like that.
Yeah, I know you do. Yep, everybody feels it. Well, just to, there's stuff that's just out of your control. You know, that's it. Take our hands out of control. Wow. I didn't know I was going to hear this news while that song was playing. But, you know, there's so much of this life that's beyond our control. But there are some things that are within our control. Allow me to change gears. Are there any zoo heads out there in listener land? Remember the old zoo, KZEW-FM, 98 FM, the Rock and Roll Zoo? Anybody out there that remembers this? You know, I got a report that somebody that I used to put noogies on his arm by request. I think he's a masochist, actually. In fact, I did it so hard one time when Sally Francis, the news girl, was in there when I was doing the 2 to 6 afternoon drive shift, which, by the way, achieved a record share, beating even the legendary Rhodey and LaBella in the morning, and I can prove it because I went to TM Productions and I photocopied the book. I had to throw John Rhodey out of the studio because he tried to convince me that a few tenths of a point. I said, this is a 23.8 share, men 18 to 49. You have a 23.2. Yeah, but that's really higher. I said, no, not really. In fact, because you got a two-man show there, you need to split those numbers with LaBella, which takes you down to a little over a 10. And yet I got a report that there was some zoo chat going on the sister station of KLIF, through which this broadcast is coming. Chief's at the studio. I am elsewhere, but through the miracle of electronics, anything is possible. I can be down there by the ice wall of the flat Earth down in Antarctica. That's the bong noise. And this guy actually said, when he was asked, well, who was doing afternoons back during the zoo's heyday? Do you know what Reiner said? It was fluid in those days. Hey, Reiner, here's a heads up. It wasn't fluid, and you know it. And by the way, whenever he refers to the demigod, well, he's talking about me. Reiner decided that my name should be the demigod of pagan rock. Of course, this is the same zoo crew that did not understand, starting with Mike, why when John Lennon was assassinated in New York City, and that was an assassination, that wasn't a straight-up murder, that was an assassination, I was so distraught. I actually I tried to drink some Jack Daniels straight out of the bottle. I could barely do it, but I had to have a drink when that news came on. I was sitting next in the living room of my friend Humphreys, and I was distraught. I couldn't help it, and I was a real hard backside in those days. I was still distraught, and I tore up a black T-shirt the next day. I wrote "Lennon was murdered" across the back windshield of my black Trans Am. Miss him. Across the back in soap. And I wrapped this black armband around. I went there. And I ran into Mike Reiner when I went on to my air shift. And he said, what are you wearing that for? And I said, if you have to ask that question, you have no business working for the zoo. By the way, there's a work in progress right now that you're going to hear all about later on that tells you everything about what happened at the Rock and Roll Zoo. Everything. So be on the lookout for that because it's almost finished. And it wouldn't matter if everybody involved in that outfit got started their writing right now. You're not going to make it. It'll be out soon, and I'll let you know the name of it and how you can get it very soon. I think it'll be well worth reading. So I'll tell you what, we are talking and talking and talking, and Dr. Janda is waiting and waiting and waiting. So why don't we get back on the line with him right now, okay? I'm sorry about that, David. We got carried away between
no, you know what? My thoughts and prayers are as well with the families and those lost at sea, and thanks to Chief for his service. And we were talking about prevention earlier, John, and, an event like this, to me, seems that it could have been preventable, right?
Yeah.
I mean, in this day and age of the technology we have, how did a merchant marine ship get that close to a U.S. destroyer?
That's a real good question.
A destroyer, right?
Yeah.
To the point where it caused such damage that 7 Patriots lost their life. There's something, John, and I know. Some people are going to say this is conspiracy. There's something we're not being told here.
There's a lot of things. There are a lot of things that we're not being told here, and I alluded to it at the beginning of the program with the bad marksmanship of that guy up there at the ballpark. Are you thinking that Rodrigo Duterte took a poke at the U.S.? I mean,
John, remember the SS Liberty?
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
And we were told when that happened, right, that we weren't given the true facts that later came out of what happened to Liberty. And I'm just wondering what happened here that a destroyer took on such damage that 7 Americans lost their lives. Because this is, Chief is an expert. I'm not at naval operations, but to me, this story is not adding up.
I think you're right. I think it goes beyond there's never time to do it right the first time, but there's always time to do it over. I think it goes beyond that little axiom. I really do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I do now. I didn't 5 minutes ago, but now that you've mentioned, Dr. Dave, this is why you are already such an asset to Caravan to Midnight, because the way you think,
that's very kind.
you think like a surgeon. You think like, what could have led up to this result? Hence your focus on prevention. What could we have done so that this would not have happened? Why did this happen? Go ahead.
Right. I mean, I cannot believe that we don't have the technology to know that a merchant marine ship is that close that it's going to inflict some kind of huge damage on one of our destroyers. I mean, not a small ship. This is a destroyer.
Yeah.
So and earlier today, I saw a report that there's a potential military coup in the making of Duarte. So I don't know. There's just too many pieces to this puzzle that to me is not making sense. And you mentioned the other event with Scalise, right?
Yes.
Now look. I believe that potential, and I know people are going to say this is conspiracy theory, but I don't know if you saw the demographics of the shooting. So my background is as an analytical chemist. That was one of my degrees in college, in addition to my double majoring in economics. But again, I was taught to reverse engineer situations. That's how I made my bones, if you will, in the prevention world in medicine. So look at the Scalise. The gunman was on the third base side, just, if you will, north of the dugout.
Yeah.
There was Scalise was playing second base. There were multiple people, as I understand it from the sources I have in Washington, closer to the gunman, the left fielder, the third baseman, the shortstop, that didn't get hit. Why was Scalise the one? I mean, there were four victims, I believe, including the gunman. But somebody was shot in the chest. It's my understanding. But why was Scalise the most serious? I mean, to me, when the third baseman, the shortstop, the left fielder could have been picked off in a second, Scalise is the one who had the most injuries.
Do we know what weapon was used in this attack?
Well, I've seen actually a couple weapons mentioned.
Oh, a couple of weapons.
Well, no, one. I mean, some people said initially it was an AR-15, and then somebody said that some other type of long gun, and so when the story changed, and not that it changes a little bit, it makes one wonder. But here's the interesting thing. On May 25th, Scalise, and I watched the video on YouTube, put a video out about human trafficking, i.e. pedophilia.
Yes.
And reportedly, Scalise was kind of leading the charge about human trafficking legislation and the push within Congress. And Trump has been pushing this, as has Sessions. And now the guy who's pushing this in Congress the hardest is the guy who gets hit.
Down, and not in the chest either, but down by the hip, as if it were to be a grievously wounding shot. Even though all these rounds supposedly went off and all of this, it's like... So if it was an AR-15, I would suspect it was something with a high-capacity magazine, or you're going to be doing a lot of reloading, and by that time, everybody in the whole ballpark would have evacuated. So, yeah, we got a hold of that video and put it up, and that he made the announcement that he's going after these human traffickers. I mean, effectively, that's what he was saying.
That's right. So and I believe this is why there's such vitriol, such just nastiness coming down on Trump and Sessions, because this is the third rail in Washington and Wall Street and in big business and around in the halls of power around the world, this issue of human trafficking and pedophilia, because the public has zero tolerance to that.
Absolutely.
And anyone that is found guilty of that or tagged with that is done.
Yeah, ask anybody who's done hard time over it.
That's right.
Ask them how that goes forward. So let me just issue a message right now. I'm an older guy now. I don't care. You want to bring it? Bring it. But understand this. The caravanners, the Ark riders, and all the people that we know. You send one of ours to the hospital, one of yours is going to the morgue. I'm speaking metaphorically, of course, but since so many things come out of Chicago, let's play off of what Sean Connery says. They pull a knife, you pull a gun. They send one of yours to the hospital, you send one of theirs to the morgue. That's the Chicago way. You want to taste the Chicago way? Understand this. We're not going to tolerate this in our society. We're not going to tolerate you in our society. Oh, finally, the Vatican is pondering whether or not excommunication of known mobsters might be appropriate. Well, duh, you think? We're going to round you up. You're going to be prosecuted, and you will spend the rest of your lives enjoying the minimalist comforts of a barren concrete holding cell when we find you, which we will. I would tell you to go to hell, but I can assure you, you're already there. Now, that's my little speech for tonight, and I turn it back over to you, David.
Well, John, I think President Trump gave us an indication that when we're talking about having questions about why Scalise was the one that was most grievously wounded, last night President Trump gave a speech, and in that speech he said, quote, Representative Scalise, Steve Scalise, took a bullet for all of us.
Well said.
And you know what? To me, that was not – Trump doesn't – some people kind of pass it off as some of these statements being off the cuff. Let me tell you something. How many off-the-cuff statements has that man made that 3 months, 6 months, 12 months later actually turn out to be prescient? That what he said actually had a meaning that was much deeper. So when he said that last night – to me, that confirmed that he was saying, look, we're onto something, and Scalise was helping push that envelope open, and that's why he was shot. I truly believe that's what Trump was trying to tell the public in so many words.
Yeah. Well,
and I'll tell you something. If you look at Scalise's wounds, now I'm going to talk to you as a surgeon. I can tell you that when he was first injured, and they said, he was shot in the hip, and it's essentially like a flesh wound. I mean, that initially they were making it out like it wasn't a big deal. Well, let me tell you something about if you get shot in the hip, it's going to go into the pelvis area. If it's going to go into the pelvis area, it's going to go into the bladder and bowel. And the one thing you have to really worry about when that happens is bleeding and resultant infection days down the line, infection that can kill. So this is not a little flesh wound. This is not a little hip injury. This is a very, very severe injury. I was heartened to hear that he was promoted, if you will, from critical to serious. That's a good move. That's a positive thing. But he's not out of the woods yet.
All right, stand by, Dr. David. Let's pick up where we leave off. We got to take a hard break right now. We'll be right back. This is Ark Midnight. We'll be back with Dr. Janda. By the way, Richard, I'm sorry, brother, but you're listening to an old show. We're not going over Red Nation Rising anymore, but we'll be hearing more from our friends Don and Donna, Don Newen and Donna Fiducia, one of the original Fox girls. They're hardcore patriots, and they will reemerge. You'll be hearing some things, some good things about them in the not-too-distant future. We have some plans for them, not completely formulated yet, but we got nothing else to do but formulate plans, right? And look, I want you to go to caravantomidnight.com, seriously, and check out Dr. Janda's book, The Awakening of a Surgeon, A Life of Prevention, Health, and Hope. And here's what's written there. Sports-related injuries have become a public health epidemic. 12 million student athletes will suffer a sports-related injury this year. Nearly 2 million injuries will be in recreational softball games and baseball games, leaving the gunfire out of it, of course. The majority of these injuries are preventable. The Awakening of a Surgeon outlines 20 strategies that can be implemented in every community to drastically reduce the possibility of injury and or death. Check it out, The Awakening of a Surgeon. It's $14.95. Go to caravantomidnight.com and get a copy. Support Dr. Janda. He's gone out on the clothesline for you. Go out on the clothesline, $14.95's worth for him, all right? And enjoy Wishbone Ash, because that's who you're hearing. The King will come. It'd be okay with me if the King came in about 5 minutes. That'd be just fine with me. This is Ark Midnight. I am John B. Wells in the left seat for the ride up to the midnight hour here in Texas. And our guest is Dr. David Janda, who has now joined the Caravan crew as a host. He'll be doing a program on Monday and Thursday, along with his own program at 1600 WAAM in Ann Arbor, Michigan on Sundays. And we're going to talk about the show and about the guests and just talk with Dr. David some more here on the other side of this break. So thanks for being with us tonight. Thanks for supporting Caravan. Thank you for supporting Dr. Janda. And just thanks for being there, okay? That's for you, Dr. Janda. Yeah.
Thanks very much. It's awesome.
All right. Hey, I'm going to be a guest on your program tomorrow afternoon.
Yeah, you're going to be on the first segment, 2 to 2:30. We're going to make the announcement to our listeners on Operation Freedom about me being honored to be chosen to be a part of the Caravan to Midnight family and platform.
You know, it's amazing to me. I was just looking at the history of WAAM. The AAM stands for Ann Arbor, Michigan. And Whitehall Broadcasting sold it to, wait for it, Big D Broadcasting in August 2003. Now, I'm in Big D, which is a big town. Don't try and find me. You can't. And and we're doing a deal with you, who is, you know, a major player there at WAAM, which is owned by Big D Broadcasting. I'm just thinking this is potentially providential that this has happened, that this has come about.
Well, it really is providential. Actually, I you know, it's interesting. Over the years, John, you know, we talked about the awakening back in 1989, and I also, folks had encouraged me to write a book because they knew about all the hassles I was getting from the sports industry and the medical industrial complex and the insurance industry about my work in prevention. And I eventually wrote the book. Folks kind of naysayed it and said, "Oh, you know, you're not going to sell that many books, and people aren't interested in it, and you'll never get on Oprah." And you know, one day, if the book was out a couple months, I got a call from Oprah's producer, and she had me on the show, and she had me co-host a show with her on the huge problem of injury in America, and she featured the book. And people said, "Well, who's your agent that got you on that?" And I go, God.
Yeah.
I have no agent. It was divine intervention. A friend of mine, who I sent the book to free. When you write a book, as you know, you send it to your buddies. And I grew up in Chicago. I sent it to a buddy of mine in Chicago, and he happened to know one of the producers of Oprah, gave it to her. She promised she'd read the introduction and first chapter of the book, and next thing you know, she loved it. She gave it to Oprah. Oprah loved it, and there I was. So, you know, that was a divine intervention moment. And I mean this very sincerely. I believe our involvement, John, and me having the opportunity and the honor to become a member of the Caravan to Midnight family and platform is another one of those divine intervention moments. And it's nothing that it was planned. It happened. It felt right to you. It felt right to me. And it was like the book. It was like the awakening. It happened. And I truly believe that this has been meant to be. And John, I truly also believe that we're going to help millions of people before this is all over. And we're going to make a lot of the globalists very uncomfortable and very unhappy, because we're going to be empowering and educating and enlightening people with your efforts combined with what I've been trying to do. And I'm forever grateful, because the Caravan to Midnight platform not only have the best staff in communications, but the communications industry, but also the best audience, along with my audience that I've developed since October 2010 with Operation Freedom. And I truly believe that combination is not only powerful, but I believe will make an enormous, enormous difference in bringing freedom and liberty and taking on the globalists like they've never had that. I don't think it's a combined entity that I don't think the globalists have ever come in contact with.
No, they haven't. And, you know, this whole thing has been, and I have not been the least bit reluctant to state this repeatedly, not only on Caravan, but also on anybody else's show who wanted to invite me on to talk. And that is that I did not plan any of this. I mean, it has been this way my entire life. There is no way that I could have planned this if I'd had all the imagination and money in the world. I couldn't have done this. But once you decide that you know who your father really is, your celestial father, your creator, once he understands that you understand, things open up to you that will remain closed to you, and you get to experience these things, all of these surprises that just. It's obvious when you look back and see the progression, but you didn't see the steps that were going to be taken. It's just, I've said before, a stepping stone appears, you trust, so you step on it. Wait a little bit, then another one appears, and you step on that, and then you wind up going, wow, I got a program here that has the best audience on this or any other planet, and we're actually doing some work that people find value in. It's not pablum. It's not, trying to, squeeze something out of them. You know what's amazing is that the Divine Miss B pointed out something to me recently, and that is the problem with a lot of things out there is that they want to twist the audience to their paradigm rather than going to what the audience actually wants and maybe even needs. But I'm looking at this in retrospect now because that's what has happened. We're taking it to them and going here, and they go, yes, this is what we wanted. It's like, well, the other question is, why haven't you been getting it? Oh yeah, there's no money in that. There's far more money in manipulation and
right. Just as there's far more money in keeping illnesses and disease kind of ongoing and not putting money in prevention, all the big money in the communications industry is in the deception world, not in the empowerment of the public world. You see, and that's where Caravan to Midnight comes in. That's where Operation Freedom comes in. John, I retired January 1st, 2017, because I felt that I could not take care of people the way I was trained in a high-quality manner because of what was happening with Obamacare. 2 years ago, I announced to my partners in the hospital complex and the medical staff that I was going to be retiring January 1st, 2017, because I am a healthcare policy analyst. I read Obamacare. I knew what was kicking in January 1st, 2017, that it was going to become more onerous taking care of patients. The government was going to have more control. The insurance companies were going to have more control. And I felt I could not adequately take care of people the way I was trained to do that. And when I retired from the active practice of medicine, many people said, so what are you going to do, Dave? I mean, you're like this workaholic. What? I go, well, I have the radio show, Operation Freedom. And what I told them, John, is, and I'm going to expand it. And folks said to me, how are you going to expand it? And I go, well, first of all, we're going from 2 to 3 hours, and we've been doing that. We did that for 6 months before I retired from active medicine. But I said, I'm going to expand it in ways I don't know yet. And they said to me, Dave, that's an incredible leap of faith. And I said, you know what? It was a leap of faith as well when I prayed for my daughter's life. And look what happened. And look what happened here, John.
Yeah. Yeah, it's amazing. It really is.
Yeah, and that's and again, there are other platforms that have approached me over the ensuing months, and I've said, no, that doesn't feel right. But when you and I spoke about this, about me being involved in the Caravan to Midnight platform and bringing the work I've done with Operation Freedom above the platform to the platform and with the family that you've created, it just felt right from the very beginning, John.
Yep.
It felt absolutely right. And it was the same feeling I felt when I decided to write the book, The Awakening of Surgeon. And I truly believe, John, that we're going to help millions of people. And I also believe it's going to have a profound impact on the freedom and liberty of every American, and actually, with the reach of the Caravan network, every person worldwide before we're done with this.
Amen to that. Amen to that. Well, that's what it's. Isn't that really what it's about? It's like, oh no, I'm in it for myself. I want to be relevant, and I want to. It's about me. No, it's not. It's about other people. It's like that Ronin thing. You have to. If you don't serve something outside yourself, you're just spinning your wheels. You're wasting your life. So, as it's written in Scripture, your life here is brief. Live it well for Him. Work for the ultimate boss. Do what He wants you to do. Ask Him to lead you. Mean it, and He will. And I go back to Edmund Burke. The biggest mistake ever made is that of a man who did nothing because he could only do a little. Well, if you can only do a little, then do just a little. And if we have a lot of people doing a little, then that becomes a whole lot. And so,
well, it is exactly right, John. And my mom and my dad imparted two sayings upon me. My mom, the history teacher, Winston Churchill. She taught me from when I was a little guy. You make a living by what you get. You make a life by what you give. And my dad's philosophy was from a guy by the name of Norman Vaughan, who was the chief dog musher for Admiral Byrd. And when Byrd conquered Antarctica, he named the largest peak in Antarctica after Norman Vaughan. Norman Vaughan was famous for saying, dream big and dare to fail. So when Norman Vaughan was 89 years of age, he decided he was going to go back and summit that peak that Admiral Byrd named after him. The problem was Norman Vaughan had really bad heart and lung problems. So his family said, his docs, his family said, you can't do this, you'll die, you'll never make it to the base, let alone the summit. He goes, I'm doing it. So his family and friends hired two guides to carry his dead body home because they knew he went with his medical condition, never make it to the base, let alone the summit. Vaughan made it to the base, and he made it to the summit. And when he got to the summit, these two guides that were 40 years younger than him looked at him and said, how did you do this? We're supposed to carry you home dead. How did you do this? He looked at him and he said, if you dream big and dare to fail, you can accomplish anything and everything in life. That was my dad's philosophy in life. And I already told you what my mom's was. You make a living by what you get. You make a life by what you give. Dream big and dare to fail. Every broadcast I end since October 2010, John, my sign-off is dream big and dare to fail. And every broadcast I do on Caravan to Midnight will be the same. Dream big and dare to fail. The globalists do not want us to dream. They don't want us to dare, but they do want us to fail. And if you dream big, and if you do dare to fail, you will defeat the globalists. And that's what this is about.
Well, little David said, take this armor off. It's too big and it's too heavy. And he came back with a Nephilim's head.
Yeah,
so
that's right.
I'm with you, brother. Look, one more time, much love to you, Dr. David Janda. Thank you so much for becoming a part of the Caravan to Midnight team. It's just our squad or whatever we are. No, we're the Caravan. We're not. A team is two, right? How can you be a team if you've got more than two? That's just stupid.
That's right.
But so is the expression. It's very concerning. What? Anyway, I look forward to your programs. I would ask you for a tease of what you're going to do, but I think everybody would rather just wait and see, because this is going to be a beautiful thing. And thank you for so much. And I want to tell you, just as we approach the midnight hour here, and it's past midnight where you are, I guess. Are you on Central or no? You're on Eastern time.
We're on Eastern.
Well, happy Father's Day.
Thank you very much, and same to you.
Thank you very much. I'll speak to you tomorrow afternoon. And
John, I want to sincerely thank you. I want to thank you for allowing me to become a part of the best group of people immediately within the production staff, but also with your listeners.
Absolutely. Who make it possible. The Caravanners make it all possible. Without them, there would be no Caravan to Midnight. And they have made sure that not only do we survive, but we succeed. And we thank them very much. And frankly, we thank God for them.
Yes,
really
we do.
All right. Talk to you tomorrow afternoon.
It's an honor, John.
Goes both ways, Doc.
Dream big and dare to fail.
You betcha. Good night.
Good night.
You know, it's really true. You can only do a job well if you're not afraid to lose it. That's what he's talking about. That's what his mom and dad were talking about. That's what Norman Vaughn was talking about. Well, I have to continue to do these nefarious things, and I know things are going wrong here, but I might lose my job. What, like you're never going to have another one? And you're going to be able to look at yourself in the mirror every day when you look in the mirror to remind yourself of who you are. As DJ Knight once famously said, we get up in the morning and the first thing we do is we go into the bathroom and we look ourselves in the mirror to do what? To remind ourselves of who we are. I'm not so sure she's wrong. In fact, I'm kind of thinking she's right, particularly here in the earthly realm. On a spiritual level, what difference does it make? Right? I just want to remind you of something, and that is we have donation buttons at caravantomidnight.com on the front page, and we have a few causes that we promote and look after. If you would like to participate in any of this, we know that the VA, now under Mr. Trump, it's going to get better rapidly. I suspect some people are going to get fired, and some may even be prosecuted. It's just I'm just saying. But we help our veterans because some of them need our help. We contribute to causes like Wolfgang Halbig's quest to expose the truth about the Sandy Hook incident. If you saw the program at Caravan to Midnight for yesterday, for Friday, then you know what I'm talking about. There is nothing about that operation that looks anything like what it has been described as and portrayed by the media as the Ministry of Smoke and Mirrors. We contribute to the Michael Strange Foundation. You know who Michael Strange is? He's a Navy SEAL who was lost on that chopper right after the Bin Laden raid. You know, the one that resulted in a Muslim burial at sea and no photographs and nothing. We've talked to his father before, Charles, many times. He grieves every day, all day, for the loss of his son, who alluded to him, Dad, you just have no idea what's going on. And because Michael Strange was a SEAL, he could keep his mouth shut. He wasn't about to talk, and he didn't. And he lost his life. Obama and that bunch couldn't care less. So we contribute to the Michael Strange Foundation. We help the people in South Africa. We expose the truth about what really happened down there. I'll give you a hint. There's a picture with F.W. de Klerk standing right next to whom? George bleeping Soros, that's who. And we also contribute to the USS Liberty Ministry Fund. I invite you to join us. I invite you to join our family. We are a family. You're not just some subscriber out there. You're a family member. You know, I'm grinning here because I'm thinking of what Dr. Venkman said, as portrayed by Bill Murray in Ghostbusters said. Remember when he said, I feel a lot of love in this room. Well, I got to tell you, I feel a lot of love all up and down the Caravan line. We're only here on planet Earth for a little while. So why don't we not only help each other, but why don't we help complete strangers out there beyond the Caravan by carrying the message to them? Look after each other, because we're all brothers and sisters. And I say again, that's why we shed tears for people we don't know, including the 7 sailors lost on the destroyer USS Fitzgerald. All right. Dr. Janda is going to cover me next week. I'm going up to the Red Pill Expo. VIP tickets are gone, but there's still some tickets left, some regular stuff, and you still got a week to get there, so go to caravantomidnight.com, pick yourself up a pair of tickets, and I'll see you up there. All right? In the meantime, God bless you. God protect you. This is John B. Wells from the bridge of Ark Midnight.